Folks, welcome back to the Mind Your Miles podcast. It has been a while, and that is entirely my fault. I apologize for that. My name is Nick Hilton. I'm here with my man, Will Baldwin. Will, how are we doing today?
I'm doing really great. I would just also want to say, if you're listening and you don't have any eyes on us, I think this is the most attractive we've ever been.
Yeah, we're going to change the name to the Handsome Guys podcast because this is just a
Your
couple
hair
handsome
looks
dudes.
incredible. I don't know what you're doing, but you
You know,
look
I
great.
just got a haircut yesterday, put a little schmutz in it today. We got a little style going here, but
So I'm just saying, put on the film if you're able. If you're not
two
driving,
two handsome guys in their prime of their life just chatting about coaching. What else could anybody else want here? So,
okay. What
the,
do you want to talk about?
well, we have a couple awesome topics today. We're going to, and since the last time we recorded, almost 2 months ago now, I ran a 100K race. Will ran a 50 miler, although he doesn't want to admit it publicly. We're going to talk about how to handle training between seasons. We know a lot of folks right now are between their fall marathon and their spring marathon buildup. So we're going to talk about things we like to focus on, things that are important for this period of time. And then Will, as always, wants to come back and talk about warm-ups because he loves talking about warming up. Will, before we get into that, how is your own personal running going? How are things going for you?
Oh, really bad.
Love that. Love that.
I just had a quick little medical hiccup scare with my heart, so I had to take a little bit of downtime. But we're resolving it and figuring it out. But yeah, so pretty low, really easy running, kind of limited right now. So, but we're gonna get the positivity and momentum rolling again. But it's been nice because I've been running. This sounds mean, but like with people, like sometimes there's people you normally wouldn't run with because they're slower than you.
Yeah. Oh, yeah,
Uh,
for sure.
and so I've been doing a lot of that and not caring about paces and just jogging very, very slowly with people. So, but other than that, I feel good. My body feels good, like my legs and everything. Um, Not very fit, and got one more heart appointment. But yeah. What about you? How's your jogging going?
We're jogging. That's about all I can say. Took a pretty extended layoff after the 100K. Didn't really rush back into things. I had my busy season with work, and I'm traveling a ton. That always kind of gets in the way of of getting a lot of good running in. But we're back. We're kind of back at it. 25 to 40-ish miles a week. I ran 10 miles on Sunday. Ran about 10 miles yesterday. Feeling okay. Overall things are going well in the gym a couple times a week. Nothing on the calendar here for this winter. I'm expecting my first child, so we're just not going to commit to anything until the summertime or until kind of summer in the fall. But overall, things are going well. No complaints here. I'm healthy and having a good time. So
Do you have a potential baby name, or is that a secret?
we're gonna keep that secret. Yeah, we'll
Very
we'll
cool.
we'll announce it when the baby's here. I don't need to open that up for feedback. Not that I don't love our listeners, but I don't really need to hear what you think about my baby's name. So we'll keep
Wow,
that we'll
that
keep that moving, and
that
we
means
will.
it's probably bad.
No, it's not bad. It's a good name. It's maybe a little old fashioned and unique.
Oh,
Uh,
I think you told me.
I definitely told you what the name was. Yeah, you are in the trust tree of people who
I
get
kind
to
of
hear the
forgot, but
name.
I'm gonna think. I have a drive later today, and I'm gonna really think hard and remember it. Um, that's cool. Uh, Congrats on almost having a kid.
Thanks. Yeah, we're getting there. We're very very excited. It could be
I hope
pretty
you
much
bring
any
it
week
on the
now.
pod and like Lion King it up for us.
For you, Will, I will do that. I will bring him on the pod, and I will do the Lion King moment.
Oh, it's a dude.
It is a little boy. Yes, it is a little boy.
Very cool. Okay. Anyways,
Well, let's get into our topics here. That's enough dicking around here at the beginning of the podcast, and let's kind of get into the main thing. So, I ran 100K back in October, the Kodiak by UTMB 100K in Big Bear. Will did come out and crew me for that event, which was much appreciated. Got some bro time in there, which was awesome. So yeah, let's talk about the race. Beforehand, expectations were low. Really just wanted to get through the race, get a finishing time, get an entry or qualify for Western States so I can enter the lottery. And I did achieve all of those goals. I finished 100K in somewhere around like 12 hours or something like that. Overall, was a very positive experience front to back. I managed my energy well. I managed my eating well, and Will, as always, did a fantastic job as a crew member, just hyping me up, telling me when I looked bad and needed to eat. He told me those things, and overall, it was a great experience. I came away from that race. I don't have a good track record in ultras. I'm like three for what feels like 3 for 30 in finishing these things, and so it was really good to get out there, have a really positive experience, execute how I wanted to execute, and come away with a finish and feeling confident that I can do more of these going forward.
I was really impressed by you for a lot of reasons. For one, it was a little bit stressful because there were a lot of wildfires that changed a lot of aspects with the race. It seemed like every time we talked, something was different. The course or parts of it, or where I would be, or where we could crew, that constantly changed, which can be stressful. And then, like you talked about, you have had some problems, and I thought you did a great job of like. And this is hard for everyone, especially for someone like you who was a legitimate professional athlete, but you're not as fast as you were. And so being honest and comfortable about what shape you're in and what you could do on the day, and actually having a game plan based off of that, and not chasing ghosts from 8 years ago. And you executed it perfectly. You stayed calm. Yeah, and it just was kind of great. Like, you got all your goals accomplished, got your Western qualifier, gonna throw in the lottery, finished. Yeah, just seemed like it went super well. Yeah, got to crew you. It was pretty easy because there's 2 spots you could crew, but they're the exact same aid station because you came back. So I saw you. We hung out for 5-10 minutes. Then I went to go run while you were running. It always sucks too, like there can't be pacers, because I had to be in the same spot. It would have just been fun if I just had run your section with you. And I
Yeah,
guess I technically could have, but like respecting the race, I just ran somewhere else, which was also mostly on course, just the opposite direction. I don't know how that's technically better than if I
yeah,
just
I don't.
run
Yeah,
behind you.
I don't know if it was what the specific reasons are with UTMB and not allowing pacers for anything under 100 miles. I don't know
Yeah,
if it's just a crowding thing, and
permits.
it's a pretty big race, and there were a lot of folks out there for sure. So I wonder if that's just like, let's keep the trails from getting too crowded. There's no need to have double the amount of people on there, but it would have been cool to have you out there for sure. Because the first time I saw you, just as a quick like recap, overall I went in with a pretty good nutrition plan, and I, had a pacing ish plan, was really just like stay super easy, keep your heart rate very, very low, especially early on. Like, don't get caught up in racing people or doing anything stupid like that. You're just focusing on your own day. Like you said, I wasn't chasing ghosts out there. This is probably the first like ultra that I've just put away my ego and just had a day for myself, which was great. But I stuck to my nutrition plan, which is really just like scratch super fuel and a waffle, and alternating that with normal scratch and a couple gels to get about 350 cal, about 75 grams of carbohydrates per hour. I stuck to that for around 6 or 7 hours. At that point, once I stopped doing that, I was having some problems eating and moving. So that just wasn't going very well. So when I saw you around, I think it was like mile 36, I think is when I rolled in to see you. You told me I looked like shit. I also felt like shit, and I knew I needed to eat. And that's what we did at that aid station. You went and grabbed me a bunch of food. I got, watermelon. I probably put down like almost 600 calories at that aid station, plus a bunch of
It was a good
fluids.
aid station. They had a lot of great stuff.
Yeah, really, really well stocked. Salted potatoes and watermelon and little quesadillas and all kinds of things. So I shoved my face full of food. I had some Coke, had some other fluids, and I walked. My goal plan was to walk out of the aid station because I knew I had ate a lot, and then once I felt like I could jog, I could jog. And that's what I walked out of the aid station. Maybe half mile later, I felt okay, started jogging, and pretty much ran most of that next section to the next aid where I stopped. I ate, and then did the same thing back to you. And my plan was pretty much that was now the plan throughout the rest of the race. Was like, we're going to eat at aid stations. I had some goo and just like some really simple gels in my pack, that if I started to feel myself getting low between aids, then I would just, pop 100 cal or 150 cal to kind of get me through. And then, just kind of focus on the aid stations and go from there. And that worked really well. Had a couple moments where I was, maybe the gap was a little too long to just have one or two goos in between. It was maybe like an hour 20 or close to 90 minutes, but overall, like I was able to execute that and feel pretty good.
What do we think about Kodiak Big Bear in general? Is it a great race? We recommending it?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think for a couple reasons, especially as like a first ultra, I think I'm not a huge personal fan of like UTMB as an organization and just, how they've cannibalized and bought out some of these formerly locally run races and how they've changed them. And so maybe while I disagree with how that they've run that as a whole, I will say as a first time ultra, it's nice to do something that's run by a bigger organization. The aid stations are really well stocked. Um, Overall, the course is very runnable. Now, the course I ran is not going to be the same as the course it is every year, so there will be some changes, but course is runnable. It wasn't crazy hard. There were no huge gaps between aid stations. I feel like for crew, everything was pretty easy to get to, and probably the same thing once you go back to the normal course too. It's easy to navigate. It's also not the hardest place in the world to get to. You'd fly into LA or fly into Palm Springs. Some of the roads were closed because of the recent wildfires, which made it a little bit more difficult to navigate to. But
Did not enjoy my drive up to Big Bear.
yeah, I think I mean you got there like at 2 p.m. in the in the teeth of rush hour, more or less, right? The day before the race. I think if you plan it a little bit better, it's a little easier. But plenty of places to stay overall. I think it's as first if you're looking for something to try, I think as first ones go, it could be a good first one to test. Um, so overall, I would give it, I don't know, a 3.5 out of 5, something like that.
Okay.
What did you think?
Yeah, I don't know. It's I only saw a pretty small part of the course. But kind of like you said, I feel like especially some of my athletes, I've had more and more instances of like bad races put together by like just randos. Like some dude just doesn't get permits or doesn't mark it and stuff. And so I'm like I like, yeah, like going through UTMB or a known organization or some little safer bet I'm kind of into because there are a lot of crappy races out there that just aren't fun or well marked or the course sucks or various different reasons. And so you're not going to get that probably at a UTMB race.
Yeah, I think it's like UTMB Aravaipa. If you're looking for like a first time ultra, I think you probably couldn't do better than Aravaipa because they do a fantastic job with course markings and organization and communication prior to the race and all that stuff. Like, I mean, you were at Javelina this year. You've been to a bunch of Aravaipa races. Like, they always just do such a bang up job, top to bottom, that I would probably, for someone looking to do their first ultra, like I think an you could do way worse than showing up to an Aravaipa race. But yeah, it can be a little weird and hit or miss with some of the smaller race organizations. I always tend to look for like a race that's been around for a long time. Like there's some of these ultras that have been around for 30 years. And a lot of those they run those really well. They've been around for 30 years for a reason because it's a cool course and the organization does a good job and everything's good. So we can probably do a whole another podcast like talking about race selection when it comes to trail and ultra races as well too, because
It's a good idea.
it's maybe even more important for trail and ultra racing than it is for road racing because of all the other variables that come along with it.
Yeah. And it's really like so broad, like what you want out of it. There's everything. There's ones that there's people everywhere. There's ones that you're going to be alone. What kind of course? Like there's so many more variables that go into the trail side than maybe the road side. Um, so that's great. So you finish. Did you put in for the Western Lottery? I know that was a
I,
goal for you.
I did. The lottery was this past weekend. I did not get picked, which is not surprising at all. Like
Expected.
there's like 60,000 total tickets in there. I had one. Some people have like 500 or whatever. So it's super rare to get picked
How
on
do
your
you get?
first
Oh,
one.
because they double every year or something.
Yeah, it's kind of like they kind of compound. Like they grow. You add tickets to it. Your chances of getting picked get higher and higher. But I just wanted to get that started. So I wanted to get a ticket in there, get started. I'm going to run 100. Very likely I'm going to sign up today in September of 2025. So that's kind of the goal coming up here for next year.
What race?
Run Rabbit. Run Rabbit Run and Steamboat is the plan.
Thought you were gonna say Stagecoach. Um,
No, Run Rabbit again because it's a Western qualifier and it's also a Hard Rock qualifier. So let's just start getting the name in all the bucket list races, and
you need some help?
I will 100% be calling you. One reason for Run Rabbit is I had a buddy who attempted it this past year, so I was out there and I was crewing him, and I was out there for the weekend and loved Steamboat. The trails there are incredible. Saw how well the race was run. You know, how to get a view of the aid stations and what the course is like and what it's like overnight, and just having that like information in the back of my head makes it feel way more attainable than just going into something without ever seeing the course or seeing what the region's like and all that kind of stuff. So it's at altitude, but I handle altitude pretty well, and it gets cold, but I also handle cold pretty well too. So it's I feel like it's a good setup for me.
Dude, that'd be so fun to kind of go along the journey with you running 100.
Yeah, a lot of ups, and we can video it. A lot of ups and downs. Although I was pretty positive, you know, at um, Kodiak more so than I thought. Didn't have a lot of really down moments. We'll see how I handle an overnight 100 miler. It's a whole different ballgame. But that's enough talking about me. Let's talk about you. You just did the JFK 50 mile, one of the most legendary ultra races in the game. Talk about that. Talk about your race and everything that went into it.
Yeah, like I was saying, I was having some problems, so didn't like race it, really just jogged it. But gosh, incredible event. It was so cool. The first part on the Appalachian Trail was just beautiful, man. Like little techie and rocky, but like not as bad as people scared me. I mean, there are parts that are really bad, but for the most part, it's a lot of it's like flowy and runnable, and just pretty, like that, you know, leaves on the ground. We had the best weather ever. And then yeah, I mean, on the towpath was awesome. Like once I got off the trail, uh right as I got off the trail, I realized I was really busy the day before doing like different things and I didn't eat that much. And we got off the trail like 15 or 16 miles and I was like, oh crap, I'm like bonked out completely at like 15 or 16. And I was running with a group of dudes that I knew. And I was like, you guys can go ahead. I'm going to like bunker down at this aid station. And I grabbed like 8 PB&Js. I was just stuffing chips in my mouth. Like just, you know, like you kind of said about Kodiak, like, yeah, I had like I don't know how many calories, but might have done 1,000 calories at that aid station. And then like caught up to them and I still had like 4 sandwiches. Well, also I was somewhere else and I got home for like one day and I got here, didn't have any gels, like I was out of everything. And I was like, all right, well, this is just gonna be like I'm gonna have to use everything on course. It was a lot of silly mistakes because I wasn't like seriously racing it. And I was like, well, I can always jog 50. It's not that hard. And so yeah, I had to use a lot of stuff on course and I ate so freaking many peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. I guarantee I ate 20 during the race.
That's
Um,
awesome. And you
yeah,
have a famously pretty iron stomach. Like I remember
yeah,
doing runs where you'd be finishing breakfast as we're like heading out the door for like a 12
yep.
miler in Flagstaff. So
I was
that's like a superpower for you.
I was actively eating food for most of the race, which did slow me down because we were running this one dude, and you know he had everything, and every time we'd get to an aid station, he would just blast through, and then it would take me like 2 more miles to catch him. So I was like, well, this is obviously very inefficient because I'm constantly catching him and then getting dropped by him again once I stop. Um, yeah, so it's just more of that, and I was just really talking with. I ran a few miles with the Torrance, my buddy Chris Wood. I ran a ton with him. And then I forgot my flight was scheduled really early. Like I had like a 5 p.m. flight out in DC. And so at a certain point, I was like, oh, I need to start running faster or I'm not going to make my flight. And so there was a point at the towpath where I told everyone, I was like, I'm going to start like going a little bit just to make sure I make it home. And it was smart because I got to the airport like 10 minutes as we were boarding. Like it was pretty bang bang. But yeah, so like because I've just been chilling, and so on the towpath, there's like probably a 8 mile stretch where I started running like under 8 minute pace, like in the sevens. But then the last 8 on the road were brutal, were so hard. Just didn't want to run pavement at
Was it
mile
just
40.
was it your legs? What specifically about it made it hard?
Yeah, my legs, I still was like struggling eating enough because as we tell people, like if you don't have gels and stuff, it's just hard to chew all day. You get over that. And yeah, I was just tired and like over it. Just like, and then also it's like you're in this beautiful Appalachian trail, you're on this incredible towpath along this beautiful river, and then you're just on this like hard concrete farm road for like 9 miles. And it's just like, just really killed my buzz too, you know? And like
Yeah,
that just hurt my legs way more than the soft dirt.
yeah, I
But
can
the
feel you
race
there.
was so good. It was so cool. Such a great experience. If you want to run a 50 miler, holy crap, you got to go to JFK. It was awesome. Which I get may not be everybody's cup of tea if you really just want to be in the mountains the whole time, but it's so runnable. You know, like if you like to run, like jog, you know, not just hike and all those kind of things, it is so great. And like I was so mad that I wasn't in better shape, but like, yeah, like if you have any fitness, you can use it because it's so runnable. So be really fun. Definitely going back next year. Going to take a crew with me, a bunch of people, and yeah, so it was awesome.
That's cool. Did you wear the same shoes the whole time, or did you change?
Wore the same shoes. I mean, I wasn't. I wore the. I really like these. The Nike. Maybe it's called the Ultra Fly. It's like the trail racer one.
Yeah,
It's great. It has a really wide toe box, just a little bit of grip. Um, it's technically has Zoom X. It doesn't feel like necessarily like a Vaporfly, but it's responsive enough. And so they were great. I enjoyed them. It's a great shoe. I would try it if you're doing something fast on dirt. But no, I didn't switch, and I could have wore a Pegasus or something. Would have all been the same.
awesome, great. So then, anything else planned, or just kind of laying low for a little while?
I think I'm gonna do the short race at Black Canyon.
Oh, cool, nice.
Yeah. Oh yeah, come up, hang out.
I will. Yeah, I'll be home. I don't have to work that weekend because I'll probably be on paternity leave. So yeah, I'll come up and hang out for sure.
Sick. We'll
Thanks
come
for
get
telling
you,
me you're going
baby.
to Arizona. That's good to know.
Yeah, I told you like 3 months in advance. That's pretty good for me.
That is pretty good. Usually it would have been like 2 days before. I did have in Adventures in Crewing. I had a buddy of mine, Adam Dalton, shout out, text me like 2 weeks ahead of the US ATF 100 mile or 24-hour championships that he wanted some crew. Was looking for some crew, so crewed him out there for the US ATF 24-hour championships. And talking about peanut butter and jellies, he ate. He didn't finish the race. He ran 109 miles in like 15 hours or something, and he ate like 14 uncrustables in that period of time. Just wild. Another guy with just an iron stomach. That guy can just eat and move with really really well. So that was interesting. And that's on a
Uh,
1 mile paved loop course, which is a whole different ball of wax when it comes to ultra racing.
we're really real ultra guys, Nick.
Yeah, I know it's a little weird, but let's get out of the ultra world and let's talk about some other stuff here. So let's start with your topic. Let's talk about warm ups. You said you want to talk about warming up. I don't know where you want to go with this, so take it and run. Well, what do you want to talk about when it comes to warming up these days?
Yeah, I just really want to quickly go through all the race distances real quick and hear what your thoughts are and what conversations you're having with people. It's one of those things I get caught sometimes in forgetting that it's kind of not known. It's maybe a little more important than I think. Like we pretty instinctively know what to do before a marathon, but I'm often very surprised how often people are like, oh, should I run like 2 miles before the marathon? And I'm like, no, that's nuts. Or the opposite, like they do nothing before a 5K or something. And so, um, yeah, I'd love with you to go through starting from maybe like the mile up and just kind of talk about what are you doing? Have you changed anything? And what are the different cases? Because even right before JFK, I was really laughing at a lot of people. I saw a ton of people doing like little workouts and doing hard strides and doing really big warm-ups. And I was like, that's insane for a 50 miler. And then I asked Ian on the start line, who's one of the best and oldest uh, ultra coaches in the game. I was like, isn't that crazy? He was like, no, I have people do that sometimes. I was like, well, I sure don't. And I can explain why and my logic there, but I just kind of I want to debate with you at that. Um, So let's start there. Let's start on the ultra, I guess, and we can go down. Um, so yeah, I see people doing like little workouts or little threshold, and these are things I have people do for the mile and the 5K and hard strides and like a mile or two. My thinking is you got 50 miles. There's no, you're not getting out the gate in something that mechanically is dangerous, which is why sometimes we do really intense warm ups. Like if you're going to do a mile, popping off at mile race pace cold is a recipe to get hurt. Even at JFK, the fastest people might run 6 minute pace. It's pretty hard to get hurt 6 minute pace for a pro athlete. That's like kind of weird. So my logic is okay, if the first mile, like if you only jogged maybe 5 minutes or you only did some static stretching, if the first mile is a little slower or you integrate strides into the first mile or two, you can easily roll that into your race and not waste any mileage or effort before because you have 50, and maybe you might be behind somebody the first mile or two, but you're always going to catch them towards the end because you're a little fresher. It's not like, oh, you wasted time, you'll never catch up. It's like for a 50-miler race like this, that's pretty crazy. Like if you feel good the last 8, you should be able to catch anybody you want to catch as long as you feel up to snuff. So personally, wouldn't really have anybody. I mean, it's very rare I'd have somebody doing anything, but we might talk about how to do those first 3 miles in a strategic way to get warmed up. Maybe on a pro athlete, there might be something a little more intentional, like a longer set of moving walking drills, maybe 5 minutes of running, but we would probably work the warm up into the first couple of miles to not waste mileage. What are your thoughts?
I mean, I'm kind of on the same page as you. Is warm ups and race distance have an inverse relationship. So the shorter the race distance, the longer the warm up and more intense the warm up is going to be.
Yeah.
Longer the race distance, the less intense the warm up is going to be. And when it comes to ultras in particular, is we're never touching that type of intensity or speed or even effort for the vast majority. If you're not going to touch, might not touch it at all. So like if you're warming up at and you're doing strides and you're doing, you know, skipping drills and, you know, some threshold work, like you're warming up systems you're not going to touch the whole day. So while I understand that like it can make you feel better right off the gun, you're also burning a little glycogen. You're also, you know, spending unnecessary time on your feet, in my opinion, at least. So like for myself and coaching an ultra athlete, it would be like, hey, especially if it's cold, let's move a little bit. Let's walk. Let's do some dynamic drills. Let's get you opened up. Let's not just go right from sitting down and then running immediately. Let's at least get you moving a little bit, but I wouldn't have you do anything more than that. And I can see for a race like JFK, if you are going to run 6 minute pace, yeah, let's jog for 5 minutes and do some strides, some drills. Let's do some leg swings. Let's at least get you so you're not feeling bad right off the gun. But even for an athlete like that, I wouldn't have them do more than like a 5 minute jog with some light strides and drills because I don't see a need for it.
Yeah. And yeah, like the thing that always cracks me up is when you go to ultras, and I get it a little bit, but you watch the start line, everyone takes off running. People don't realize how much of ultras are walking. And so people like warmed up running, they get off the start line, they run a mile, and they immediately start walking. In my head, I'm like, I wish you had flipped that and we didn't waste that whatever mile you ran before and you just walked off the line, and those 2 miles you were going to run, we ran somewhere on the course that gets you further towards the finish line. Because some people only have so many running miles in them, and I don't want any of them outside of the competition time. And so, yeah, like, and you know, if someone's worried about not being warmed up, it's like, oh, I need to walk for a little bit. I need to jog. It's like, do that at the gun, you know, like walk off the start line, like then do your 5 minute jog, walk a little, like you, whatever protocol we set or you think you need, you can do that off the line. And at least you're moving towards the finish.
Like, bud, you're going to be out here for 16 hours. You have got plenty of time to warm up. Like, you don't need to do that ahead of time. And honestly, like, if you're like super geared up and warmed up ahead of the race, like to me, that's could be a recipe for getting out way too hard. And then all of
Yeah.
a sudden you run that first mile hard, you feel good. And then you're in a group that's a little bit over your head. And then 15 miles later, you're totally fucked because you are, 15 minutes ahead where you need to be, and you've been running a minute per mile too fast. Like that's, to me, that's another one of the risks where I'd rather you feel a little janky off the gun, take your time, ease into it, be a group or two back from where you want to be. You have so much time to make up ground. Like if you're having a good day, you'll make that up and then some. So let's just be conservative there and safe. But
Well, yeah, like you're saying, like if you're too warmed up, it's probably just gonna be easier for you to get out too fast.
mhm.
Like that's the only thought I had when I did Pikes because it starts like a mile or two on the road, and I looked like I remember at one point this lady came up to me, and it's a road section, so I'm probably running like 6:30 pace, which for me is not too crazy. And this lady's next to me, like feels like she's sprinting, hyperventilating. I'm like, lady, we're about to climb a 14er. Like, you are lactic. You are like VO2 max right now. Like, what? Like, what are you doing? Uh, like if you have that kind of effort, wait till we're like up there, then do that. So, yeah, yeah, and just with how much people walk and hike, even almost everybody in these races walks and hikes. And so it's just better to do that. So at least you're moving in the direction of the finish line. Let's transition that into the marathon. Pretty similar. Most people, I say 5 to 10 minutes. I think the hard thing is for the marathon, though, there is this weird thing of like people are like, well, I won't be warmed up enough. I'm like, yes. And so we talk about, well, there's lots of drills, there's lots of active stretching stuff. But for most people, especially like a lot of the people we coach who are like BQ people, there is a little bit of known you're not going to be 100% warmed up by the time the gun goes. Like that's just a little bit like that's what this is. Like the first mile might suck, right?
Mhm. Yeah,
Um,
I approach it. It depends, and so much of this depends on the race you're going to do. Because
yeah,
if you're running majors, you're running these big races, like your opportunity to warm up is going to be super limited. You might be stuck in a corral for 90 minutes before your race, and so you're not jogging. You're not going to be able to do what you want to do ahead of that, which is tricky. Um, for those, so
well, even then, you can't even run the way you want to run the first few miles, so it doesn't really
correct.
matter as much. Like you're
Yeah.
boxed in.
So, like, what I tell an athlete kind of depends on what race they're going to do. Like, if it's a smaller race where they're going to have an opportunity to warm up, 5 minutes of jogging, let's do some dynamic drills, let's do some strides. That's really all you need. I'd still rather you be under warmed up and take that first mile to get warmed up and be conservative than to be over warmed up and then be out like a bat out of hell or like a shot out
Yeah,
of a gun, going out way too hard. Personally, when I was racing, I would run a mile or I would run an easy 10 minutes, super easy. I would
yeah,
crank it up to like marathon effort for the last 2 to 3 minutes just to kind of get that cadence, take a pee, do a couple strides. That was it. I would still rather feel not warmed up enough that first mile than to be a little bit too deep into it. I just needed to get the legs moving.
yeah.
And so,
Well,
and then for,
that's a
go
really
ahead.
good point. Same exact thing for me. And these are two guys, you and I, who ran 90, 100-mile weeks most of our career. So even us, we don't want to run more than 10 minutes. We're working with people who might be running 30 miles a week. Like that 10 minutes is far more valuable and impactful for them, like them running a little bit too much before a marathon. The risk is a lot higher versus like we could easily have run 2 mile, maybe even a 3 mile warm up for a marathon. It wouldn't hurt us that much. But for some people, that's a lot. It's a lot of running.
Yeah, that's 10% of your weekly volume, which is not insignificant.
Nope.
Um, And for me, like I wouldn't, I'm fine if the first 2 miles feels fast. Like if I'm not like fully warmed up and I'm supposed to be running 5:10 or 5:15 pace that first 2 miles, like I'm okay if it feels my legs aren't quite there yet. And then because I know I'm going to settle in, at some point in that first 4 or 5 miles and it's going to be fine. Um, and I try to convey that to my athletes, like, hey, those first couple miles, like they're not going to feel great. Like slow down. I'd rather you be 15 seconds slow cumulatively over the first 2 miles than to be 15 seconds fast. Like take your time, let yourself warm up into it. You can make up so much more ground in the second half if you're smart in the first half. Like, and especially for if you're doing like a Chicago or a New York where you just don't have the ability to get out and jog, like, yeah, you're going to have to take that time to warm up ahead of time or warm up during the race and almost throw away those first 2 miles and then, be ready to actually start racing 2 or 3 miles into it.
Yep. Anything else on warming up for the marathon?
No, I
Um,
would I would just mention eating. Like if you do a jog, like pop that gel between your warm up jog and the start of the race. Just maybe half of it is like psychosomatic, but topping off those glycogen stores, you did burn a little bit of sugar there. You burnt sugar since you've eaten your breakfast. So like just top it off. Take a gel. Not a big deal. You're not going to feel it, but it is helpful.
that is always like I tell that to every single person. Bring it with you no matter what. Like
Mhm.
worst case, you toss it or you just run with it. But I've even brought like a granola bar to the start line or having a water bottle, like having all that stuff just in case you need any of it. And like you said, it's really good to hit that gel right before. Um, that is a big part of the warm up. Like just making sure those are the things I'm thinking about more. Like, did we use the bathroom? Are we good glycogen wise? Are we good hydration wise? Getting those parts right more than like, yeah, there's not so much we can do running wise
I would sacrifice my warm up jog to take a good dump before a marathon, especially
or pee.
or pee, like early morning races. Like I'll cut that short to spend an extra 15 minutes in the bathroom because I just want to be totally emptied out. So
100%. You want to feel comfortable, ready to go, so it's not a problem when you get out there. And
yes,
then we kind of said it, but like since we can't run as much, we definitely do more active mobility, those type of warm ups. Pulling your knee up to your chest, heel to butt, some of those leg swings, skipping, any drills like that. I tell people to spend more time on those type of things where it's not actually running and not firing up the running systems, but we can still get the legs feeling good and loose, ready to boogie.
absolutely, 100%.
Okay, working our way down, just a couple left, half 10K. Changes a little bit. Half isn't a scary, like volume wise, like we can do, generally for most of my folks, it's probably a 2 mile. Um, could be 10 minutes, 20 minutes, something in there. Couple strides. Typically don't do much elsewise because it's also one of those things that the first mile can be a little more relaxed. We're not burning off the line. We can work our way into it. Um, yeah, so it might just be a mile or two and some strides. For the half, 10K, 5K, that's kind of start where I start thinking about, do we need a little tiny workout in here? It's 5K for sure. It's 10K sometimes. Like, do we need a little threshold 3 minute or, you know, sometimes I'll do 2 to 4 by 1 minute at threshold and then some strides just where those systems are turned on and we feel ready to go and not flat off the start line because we don't have as much time. A lot of the other same things apply for me. We're still taking that gel to the start line. We're still going to do a lot of active mobility, trying to get there really early. Any other thoughts on the half 10K, 5K?
I would say to me the half lives in a different world than the 5K, 10K do, and
Yeah.
I would treat the half warm up and this kind of depending on how fast the athlete is. Because
Hmm.
if you are a sub elite to elite athlete and you're closer to an hour, it's a different intensity than
Yeah.
someone who's going to run closer to 2 hours. And so the needs of that warm up are going to be a little bit different. So
Yeah.
for a higher end athlete, we'll say BQ or 80 minutes and faster, something like that. You're going to do a little more intense. We're going to go 2 miles. We're going to finish. I love all my warm ups for races to be progressive rather than doing like 4 by 1 minute. Like, hey, run that first, 10 minutes of that 2 mile jog easy. And then we're gonna ramp up the last three of that. So you're going to start to just
I
like
like that.
ease your way into and finish it right at half pace. Like that last 30 seconds is at half pace.
Yeah.
And then we get into drills and then we do
I will
strides.
say often that feels very uncomfortable.
It feels horrible. It almost
Yeah.
never feels good. You're not ready for it, but
Yes.
it's like we got to shock the body a little
Which
bit.
is why we do it. It's like it's
Yeah.
better to feel awful and then it kind of sends that signal to the body like, hey, this is what we're doing. And so you get some of that awful feeling out there. Then when we get on the start line, it's not much of a shock, which is why we do that.
Especially for like a faster athlete, it's just like that. You're running, you're locking into threshold pace, which is like your peak of what you can hold for an hour right away, and you're going to be
Yeah.
pretty uncomfortable when you're running a fast half pretty early. And
Yeah.
so, just like getting your body ready for that intensity of an effort, I think is super important for someone who's more of like a 2 hour half marathoner. To do a similar thing, 10 minutes, maybe progress a little bit, and then drills and strides. It's closer. That's closer to a marathon warm up than my 75-minute half marathoners would be.
Yeah.
And then 10K is going to
Because
be
like
more
you said, it's a different system. For those faster guys, you probably are at threshold. For the other guys, it's in that in between zone where there's still a lot of aerobic. It's not as hard of a mechanical task, so we don't need that intensity. It isn't at true threshold. So yeah, we don't need as crazy of a warm up.
correct. Yeah, exactly. You have a little more time. You have a little more ability and flexibility to kind of warm up into it if you're a 2 hour half marathoner, where versus if you're trying to run 75 minutes, you got to be ready to kind of like boogie right at the gun.
So then 5K, 10K stuff. What are you doing there? Because like we said, that's an intense. There is a mechanical part. Like you got to have those legs warmed up enough to get moving off the start line. It is different. Like I said, I typically have people doing small workouts beforehand, pretty intentional strides. What are you doing there?
For most of my athletes, it's really just an extension of what we would do for like a half. We're gonna do the progression. We're gonna do some drills and some strides. I don't do. I wouldn't say I recommend having them do like little mini workouts. We just have to get your lungs working, get your legs
Yeah,
moving, so you're not off the gun feeling. You're not off the line feeling like you're sprinting right away. So
yeah,
those strides, we're doing them at mile race pace or faster. We want you moving faster than 5K pace. We want a little bit of that, aerobic or threshold stimulus by cranking it up during the warm up, and then spending more time with the dynamic movements. So spending more time with the stretches and then doing high knees and butt kicks. And if you do A skips and B skips, let's get a good set of those in. So your hips are opened up and you're ready to be a little more explosive off the line.
I will say generally for us, it's probably we're doing even more strides as we're getting down into 5K in the mile, like where maybe some of those other races might just be 3 to 5 strides. When we get down towards 5K in the mile, it could be 6 to 10 even of like
You're probably
really
doing
making
3 or 4
sure.
with your trainers on. You're doing your drills and you're doing your hip mobility. Then you're putting your spikes on. Then you're doing another 4 or 5 on the track. Yeah, it's a whole little bit of a different ball game.
Yeah, or your flats if you're on the road. But yeah, it
Yeah,
might be, and then you might notice you need to tie your shoe differently. You might do a couple, and often, I think for us personally, we know, but we also tell people usually you're trying to go until you get a feeling like you need 6 or 7 or 8, but as you go, eventually there's like a tension you get with your stride where you're like, okay, this feels right. I feel kind of ready to roll, and so you kind of keep going until you find that point. Sometimes you get out there and after 4 or 5, you're like, whoo, it's system's ready to go. I feel springy, and sometimes you'll kind of stop. You're like, nope, I'm ready. Things are rolling. Sometimes you've done 8 and you're like, I need to like rip a 30-second one because there's still something not turned on here. And so learning and listening and feeling that of like, do I need another hard? Sometimes you just got to rip, like I said, 20 or 30 seconds to just turn the stuff on in the body and wake up.
yeah,
Um,
especially and that's like with the shorter distances, like the weather plays a more of a role because
yeah,
if it's like a warm day, it's way easier to find that like locked in feel. Like a
very
warm day, you
true.
only need 3 or 4 strides. Like your muscles
Right.
are lubed up,
And
everything
same with
feels
the warm
good.
up. You might cut 5-10 minutes. You don't want to overheat.
Sure, especially if it's close to hot, or if you live in a place like Phoenix or somewhere where it gets humid, like you're not going to warm up nearly as long as if you would be doing a 5K in January in New Jersey. Like
Well,
it's a
and
different
also a
ball
pro
game.
tip there, adding to the warm up, like people ask all the time about like, well, should I wear this during the race? And it's like, well, if you can warm up enough to where you don't need that hoodie or whatever it is, it's like, oh, maybe you add an extra mile so your core body temp's up enough so that you can have the apparel choices that you actually want.
Yeah.
Because that can make a big difference too. That's a good tip. And then same thing, we're still probably having that gel, still trying to make sure our systems are all right. I talk all the time about being there early enough so that we can handle all the issues. Um, but yeah, anything else? We
I mean, I think the clothing is a good thing to harp on. Like, have for your warm up, have warm ups. Make sure you're not just like running around in your tank top and your shorts or half tights or whatever. Even if it's a little warm, I think this is partially mental as well as physical too. Like changing from your t-shirt to your singlet, there's something
yes,
about that. Just like changing your shoes, like you're
yes,
flipping a switch in your mind. So I would
yes,
also, and for cold days, like overdress. You don't want to be standing around shivering. or
Yes.
jogging around shivering. Like you'd rather be overdressed and sweat through your hoodie in your warm up
Yes.
than be underdressed and still cold when you finish it. So just making sure you're dressing appropriately and taking that into account is really important.
Yeah, dude, that's so smart. I remember like in middle school, our track coaches were like very adamant on that like we needed to have a sweat going before you like started things. Which makes sense in some ways. That's huge using your clothes strategically. Like I think it's why people wear suits, you know, like when you dress that way, you act a different way. And then like you said with like weather and stuff, like use warm-ups to your advantage. Help, like let those extra layers help you actually physically warm up. Um, and that's really smart. Man, I think that's pretty good. I don't know if I have anything else on warming up. Um, yeah, I mean, we have talked a lot about that, and that is a thing that we try to push on people is like switching the shoes and the clothes. Like, it's something people fight back on sometimes about shoe changes, but there is a real big mental thing of like, oh, when I put these on, that's when I go to race. That's when I'm like really working. So I do love that one a lot. Um, yeah, cool. Any last bits, thoughts on warming up?
No, I think we covered it. I think we did a good job at going down the lines. I mean, and the shorter distance you get, like mile, 800, like that's almost a totally different ball game. Like if you're racing that kind of stuff on the track, like you want to be in like your second wind almost for some of those races. Like you want to be
Yeah, 8 in the mile,
really warmed up.
we're doing a workout before.
Hmm.
Like yeah, yeah, there's a real whole procedure we're gonna do before that to make sure we're ready there. Um, cool. And what was the last thing we want to talk about? I forgot.
So I just wanted to kind of, touch on, we're kind of in the shoulder season right now. We just really
Yeah.
just finished like the fall marathons with the conclusion of CIM this past weekend. That kind of, well, I guess Houston, but it's its own thing. Houston and Mesa, Rock and Roll Phoenix, they all kind of live in their own world. For most
Yeah.
folks, we're in like that shoulder season after their fall marathon before we start the buildup of Boston. I think we're like, what, 19 weeks away from Boston, something like that, maybe more. Um, Somewhere in that range. So I just want to kind of talk about, I had this conversation with an athlete yesterday, like what are the things to focus on now? Like obviously we're still jogging, we're moving, but the what are the things that maybe fall off over the course of the buildup that we should be really trying to lock in now and making a part of our routine? And the first thing that I brought up was mobility. Like, let's really spend some time, post and pre and post run working on your mobility. So, doing some stretches and drills and things that you maybe would when you're in the heat of a buildup and you just did a long workout and you're tired and you skip it and you go to your shower. Like, let's try to make that a part of the routine and really cement it in there. And that's one of the things that I'm having athletes focus on right now.
Yeah, man. I think with that hand in hand goes strength. It's something people talk about all the time, and I think if it's like, it's always kind of difficult to integrate mid-season. It just feels weird, and like people are always nervous about that. And so like, this is really the time to start building a routine or going somewhere. And I just really encourage people to keep it simple. It seems overwhelming, but it's like if you just and if you're in that position, you're starting a block or you're kind of ready to do some strength. If you just focus on 3 movements, like, oh, I want my calf raise, a half squat, a
Do a
Bulgarian squat.
Yeah,
Uh,
if you're going twice a week, one day is a squat day where you're doing like a sumo squat with a dumbbell. You don't have to do back squat. You can even do air squats if you're super beginning. Do a push and a pull, one light upper body exercise where you're pushing, one light upper body exercise where you're pulling, and then finish with some functionality. So let's do some lunges, let's do some calf raises, things of that nature that are working different muscle groups. Like that's the thing. 4 or 5 movements, keep it simple, 25 minutes in and out, you're on your way. Like, and that's the
yep.
routine that we need to dial in right now and make it a habit. Cause like you said, it's so hard to do that in the middle of a buildup. And it's also, it feels risky for the athlete because now they're introducing all this soreness on top of the fatigue that we're building up for what they're training for. That it's just a hard thing to introduce mid buildup. So let's do it right now.
Yeah. Oh my
And
gosh.
then that second day, just to kind of round, if you're not doing your second day, it's not a squat day. We're going to do deadlift day. So it's like Romanian single leg deadlifts, just a different movement where we're more focused on hinging at the hips, less about the squat. And then we're doing that upper body push and pull, and then some other type of functional movement. Um, typically, like if you're uncomfortable, you can ask a coach, or we can always recommend like a good strength person to really give you like that individualized attention. But if you focus on those little things, keep the weight low and just focus on the range of motion, like it's super valuable to get that in.
Yeah. I yeah, I have some really good routines that I love that are, they're all like 5 exercises. And I tell people, it's like, if you can just master these 5 movements, I guarantee you will be a better, more injury resilient runner. Um, but that's the problem, it's like there's so much equipment and things in different classes. And it's like, you just have to pick something and stick with it and master it. And you will see some progress. Yeah, but starting basic, and if you need help with that, reach out and ask somebody. But because there's so many great resources and people to work with. Um, so mobility, we said strength, off season. What else are we doing? Right after the races, this is a time where I love for people to focus on those other little things they like to do. Like if you're a swimmer, a biker, a CrossFitter, you play rec league basketball. I think when mileage is low, maybe if we're still on the off period of running, I think it's really fun to dive into those. This is the time, that first 6 weeks after a race. It's like do all those things where we're, there's a little active recovery, we're moving. Yeah, that's something I really push.
Absolutely. Because part of being a runner, and this is a stupid thing that runners do, we deny ourselves things that we like to do in the middle of a buildup. We deny
Yeah.
food we like to eat. We deny activities we like to do. We don't need to do that. We do it anyway. This is your
Yes.
time to indulge yourself. Like my shoulder season, I'm out there hitting golf balls like 3 days a week. I'm playing golf. Like I'm doing something that when I'm in
Yeah.
the teeth of a buildup and I'm fatigued, I'm probably not going to do it. But right now, like I am indulging all those little things, and it just keeps it fun and it breaks it up too. Like you don't want to just be like go from a training grind to your off season grind where you're doing the same kind of thing over and over again. Like you want to keep it fun, and the way to keep it fun is to do some different things and have a little variety. Variety is the spice of life, as they say. So don't be afraid to introduce that stuff into your running life as well.
Wow. Um,
Dropping wisdom bombs on the Mind Your Miles podcast.
yeah, you really did. Good for you.
Hey, thanks.
Um,
My
um,
dad wisdom is coming in, so we gotta wait until the dad jokes start dropping.
dude, you've been a dad since I've known you, even
Yeah, pretty
without the
much.
children.
Yeah, just nerdy, just yeah, awful,
You got
awkward.
dad energy.
Thanks.
Um, okay, yeah. I have thoughts like coming out of that, what we're gonna do running wise. Anything else, you're thinking of what we're focusing on that off
I
season
mean,
period?
diet, nutrition, like just let's focus on eating and getting into good habits there. Like, yeah, indulge, allow
Dude,
yourself to eat some different stuff, but this is the time to really try to get that kind of dialed in.
I'm
So it
going to
becomes a
do it
habit.
maybe next week, but I've said for a while I want to have my friend who's a nutritionist that works with runners because that is a question we get all the time of like people wanting to lose weight, which naturally happens for me inside a cycle. But for people that's not happening for, I often feel a little conflicted and confused because we don't want people trying to cut in the middle of a block. That's dangerous. And so it's like, okay, maybe this is the time where we can focus on that a little bit more, where it's less dangerous. Yeah. So if we
I
need to,
Go ahead.
go ahead. No, no.
No, you go ahead.
I
No,
was
you
just say
go.
if that's something we're trying to do, this could be the time to reach out to somebody and figure that out. But yeah,
Yeah, I am super. I don't like to talk about weight at all. I want to. It's almost feels like the third rail of run training. I just don't. There are so many different body shapes and body types that are successful in this sport, and if you think you have to lose weight, you probably really don't have to lose weight. And that's probably a bad mental space to be in. Instead of
yep,
thinking about losing weight, let's think about eating cleaner and think about what are the things you can do to feel better in general, and eating better whole foods, improving your diet, doing your strength training, are all things I would look to focus on instead of weight. I just don't like to say that word at all. And some runners, it's just like, and I've been there too, where you have, I've historically had, some body image things, and I get fixated on how much I weigh and compare that to how much I weighed when I was, at my fastest, and it's just not healthy. It's not good. Like, if you really, really want to have that conversation, like my notes is just to go talk to an RD, a registered dietitian or nutritionist, or someone else who's a professional in that field. But let's look to clean up the other things around the running. Let's eat clean. Let's eat healthy. Let's get in the gym. You don't have to be quote unquote lean to be a fast runner or anything like that. Like there's no one body shape that's successful in the sport. And you can even look among the elites. Like there are people of all different shapes and sizes, both men and women, who are successful here. And it's just not something that's healthy to lock onto.
Okay. I have some good I agree with you. And we're maybe people don't believe it, but we're examples of that. We were often larger than our training counterparts.
I looked like I could eat people that I raced against when I was competitive. I mean, I'm
I
six
was
foot
just trying to
three.
explain that to someone, like how in my college locker room I was like a bigger guy and they like were looking at me like I was nuts, but you don't realize how small some of these runners are, you know.
Especially, yeah. I mean, I was racing against Kenyans in the steeplechase. They're 5'2", 5'3". They weigh 95 pounds. Like
Yeah.
my their waist is my quad. Like it's a different ball game. So it is. And look at people like Matt, even on the elite end, like Matt Takenkamp and Chris Zielinski, like not small, tiny guys who are super successful. So there is no one body shape that's necessarily faster than others. And if people tell
Um
you that, they're full of shit.
Transitioning, another really important thing to think about off season is getting some logistics handled. It is getting so hard to run races. Uh, you know, it's about to be New Year's. Grandma's is going to sell out the first 2 weeks of January. Um, you got to do all your lottery stuff. And so sometimes after a race, you can kind of reflect, did I like that type of race? Do I want a bigger atmosphere, smaller, more intimate? Am I trying to get into Western? What need like, uh, people are always amazed when I tell them, like, someone asked me the other day what I do for work, and I was explaining I'm a running coach. And, like a lot of what we do is helping people do that because people don't realize you can't just run the Boston Marathon. You can't sign up and do it. And for most people, it is a 2-3 year process. Like this time of year, often we get people like, oh, well, I'm not there. Can you get me there in a year or 2 years? I'm like, yes. So say we run it in CIM 26, that means we're applying in the fall of 27 and we're going to run Boston in 28. It's like, it's crazy.
It's absolutely crazy for any of those majors. It's a long process. So creating an Excel sheet that has the whole process outlined for you, so you know what you need to do, or you could just find some other smaller, more locally run races that are a little bit easier to sign up for. But this is a great time to think about those logistics. So yeah, because if you're going to do grandma's, like, better be signed up now, and you better get your hotel immediately because there's very limited
Flights.
hotel inventory, and you have to get it early.
Yeah. There is a big part of the sport that logistically just has a lot of details to it. And so this is a good time to be thinking about, like, okay, what do I want to do this year and next year? And what do I need to do that? Do I need to qualify for anything? Do I need to run a race before that? So it's a good time to start planning that so you're not disappointed. And then, as we talk about often, especially for all our folks coming off of marathons, this is a great time to start working on some of those weaknesses. Maybe doing a speed block. Hope if you have a coach, you can be talking about that, doing a 5K or 10K block and working on some of those deficiencies. If you're on your own, really start incorporating those strides and hill sprints and getting in the weight room and using this time before you get back into the specific marathon training and there isn't space to do that. That's how I handle a lot of my athletes. January through March tends to be a lot of turnover work and getting us mechanically ready before we head back into marathon training, whatever that's going to be, spring or fall stuff. Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with it in our off season.
Same thing here. It's the time to address our weaknesses and do something different. Have fun with the training, sign up for a road mile somewhere. Let's not grind ourselves into dust over the holiday season. Let's just have some fun with some things. And
Yeah,
we'll look to get serious after the new year as we approach, Boston or whatever other spring marathon you have coming up.
a lot of my career, there was always like some big glaring issue. Like everybody knew for like several years, my calves, and so like after a race, it'd be like, okay, what am I what am I going to do to address that? What strength stuff am I going to do? What am I going to change footwear wise? And so, and then for a while it was my hamstrings, but for me it was always like, okay, what's my weak link? What, this off season, now that I'm not in full training, I don't have a race right around the corner, what's that big thing I'm going to work on that's going to make me better? Yeah, and so yeah, for me it was always like a body part. For some people it might be fueling stuff, starting to research and practice with that. But that was always a fun thing for me. I just liked getting better, and so thinking about that and kind of diving into what I was gonna attack there. Yeah.
That's all I got, man. I mean, I think that's we kind of addressed it. Work on your weaknesses, do some different stuff, get in the gym, focus on the little things right now and just have fun with it. I think in that shoulder season, just don't be so serious about it. Let yourself relax a little bit and enjoy training for a little while before things get hot and heavy again.
Take your mom out for a jog when you're home for Christmas,
Yeah, that wouldn't happen here, but yeah, if your mom is into jogging, take your mom out for a jog. That sounds like a lot of
My
fun.
mom likes to jog.
Yeah. My mom does not.
Okay, well, you can jog with my mom.
Yeah, we can jog with your mom together. And on that note, I think it's about time to end the Mind Your Miles podcast. Will, any final thoughts?
I just missed you so much. I'm so glad we're back.
We are back. Hopefully we'll be back again next week with a fresh slate of hot topics to go over here at the Mind Your Miles podcast. On behalf of Mr. Willie B, my name is Nick Hilton. You can find us here on Spotify, wherever you get your podcast. Mind Your Miles podcast.substack.com or something like that is where you can find us, or shoot us an email. No one's emailed us really yet at mindyourmilespod@gmail.com. Reach out with your thoughts, suggestions, or if you are happen to be coached by Will or I, just shoot us a text and let us know what you would like us to talk about. On behalf of Will, my name is Nick, and thank you so much for listening to the Mind Your Miles podcast, and we'll see you next time.